Sorry, Saoirse, touch back.
I just missed your heart.
You're dead. Right now. I've killed you.
I guess what excited me about the movie was, first and probably foremost, the kind of formal craft aspect of making an action film. I kind of was intrigued as to how to do that.
At the start, when I read the script, the first thing that hit me was the action and the fact that Hanna did kill people and she was very experienced in fighting and weapons and things like that, and I had never done anything like that before.
Saoirse approached the role with an extraordinary focus and discipline. She obviously trained very hard in terms of the physical aspects of the role. She worked very closely with Jeff Amado.
And we had to train her to become basically a killer and learn how to defend herself and fight and be very convincing that she would be able to handle herself at a very high level of skill, but yet not to be like a martial artist per se.
Jeff Amado played a large role not only in the fight choreography but also in the development of the character.
Going through the script and realizing where she came from and that she's been totally isolated all her life from any other people except her father.
She had been sort of trapped in a forest for about 14 years of her life and had never really seen the outside world. She'd only been with her father, and that was the only education she got was from him.
In terms of the martial arts, we kind of looked at Hanna being a very centered character, having a very strong core, having a very kind of good balance, never moving when she didn't need to move.
So on action, Saoirse rolls over onto her front, right?
There's, you know, wildlife around her and nature and everything else, which is another element to draw from and to observe and watch how the animals survive. And then the conversation with Joe, it was very, you know, with his strong influence of how he saw the character.
Everything was extremely poised, and that, in a way, was the first step to discovering how to portray Hanna as a character emotionally, too.
For her to step out into this world is very overwhelming and scary and beautiful and full of love and sadness. And for me, it basically represents how teenagers feel when they step out into the world for the first time. So it's got a lot of meanings, I think. It's not just about this girl that kicks ass.
The most important thing for the movie was you had to believe that Saoirse Hanna was capable of doing what she did. I mean, if you didn't believe her as this kind of deathly assassin, the whole film would, you know, be a non-starter. So I guess the most important thing was Jeff's work with Saoirse and Saoirse's kind of total 100% commitment to the suspension of her own disbelief that she could, you know, actually kill 4 men with her bare hands.
When Joe rang me up for the first time, he said, you know, you're going to have to train really, really hard for this role. And I thought, yeah, I know, it'll be fine, I'll be able to do it. You know, I swam and I did things like that when I was younger, so it's all fine. And then I got into the gym and I had to start lifting weights and pushing these bars over my head and running on treadmills every single day, and it's hard. And I did martial arts training with Jeff Amado and his team in LA, and there was a lot involved, a lot more than I thought there would be.
One of the things that Joe made very clear early on was that he hates seeing a lot of cuts in fights, and which I do too, because quite often you work really hard on these sequences and you can do them from start to finish, and then you see the film and it's, you know, cut up into 120 shots in 30 seconds. In this film, it's the exact opposite. He warned me straight up that there'd be, you know, long sequences where he wouldn't even put in a cut. So I was like, oh. It really puts the pressure on.
It's based on many different styles, and yet I'm trying to make it so it doesn't look like a style. There is some basis of a trained agent, out in the field would get, and yet there's other aspects about her because of her size and how she's grown up out in the wilderness to blend in with that, to give her sort of a little more organic feel to how she's fighting.
Jeff would incorporate just different styles. There was one that was created by a woman, so we used that a lot because the people that I'd be fighting would usually be a lot stronger than me and a lot bigger, and so I'd need to use their strength in order to hurt them. And then Jeff wanted to put Hannah's own taste on it as well.
So I came up with a certain look that's something where she could move very quickly and have a lot of stealth behind her and very agile, but yet have some very, very strong, powerful moves behind her. And also she's got this sort of a genetic thing going on where she's a little bit different than everybody else, so there's a little extra to draw from to have this extra strength and power, but yet not superhuman.
Sometimes I think, is this really going to pay off me lifting weights all day? But it did, because I did do quite a few of the stunts myself.
Saoirse is, I would say one of the best people I've ever worked with physically. She's really well prepared. She's got great coordination, worked really, really hard in the prep period, getting her strength and just her concentration levels up. It's sometimes difficult to do fights with actors. It's a lot easier doing fights with stunt people.
Come on.
But it can be trickier with actors, and with her it wasn't. I mean, besides the fact that I'm always concerned about knocking out a 15 or 16-year-old girl, there is this kind of traditional fatherly element to him, being a protector and a teacher, but at the same time he's really preparing her for battle. So it's a combination of being a father and being a drill sergeant.
Yeah.
Both of them have sort of a similarity because the father passes it on to the daughter, that's the total influence that she has.
Action!
We had a hell of a lot of time to fight together in rehearsals and do stunts together and some of our training together, which was great.
Eric and I would go in and they'd teach us the fights, and it would take us a few days to learn.
Good energy, guys.
Depending on how big the fight was, I suppose, because some of them are quite small, some of them involves guns, so it's actually easier if you've got weapons. But the stuff that Eric and I had to do together was all with our hands.
It was very useful to have the fighting because that was actually an area where they weren't acting together, but they had something to do, they had an activity. In this, the action was a very useful tool.
My character is fighting with his daughter, but he's also teaching her. So in terms of choreography, it's this really fine line between really getting into it and being very physical, but at the same time not hurting her. Where in a traditional fight, it's usually about two people going after each other and, you need a winner.
It's very sweet because he wouldn't want to hurt me or anything. He's got arms that are like this size, and he's very strong and tough, but he'd make sure he'd never hurt me. I hurt him more than he hurt me, actually.
It took a little bit of time to get Eric to kind of loosen up and realise that if he threw a punch at Saoirse, she was going to duck, that it was okay to play a little bit rough with her. She's quick and she's sharp and she knows what she's doing. So that was a kind of process of building up trust.
Cut! Cutting! Check it, please. Check the gate. Hold on. Sledge.
Even though we had the choreography and everyone knew what the choreography was. It wasn't until the day that we really sorted out what we were going to do, which was a bit scary.
Jeff had, in some ways, almost too much faith in Saoirse and I, and would be constantly changing whole sequences of choreography at the last minute because he would see something that was better or more interesting, and it would always be scary because you were always learning a lot of stuff, you know, very, very late in the piece.
Where you stop and look at each other and then talk.
Where am I? You're in a safe place.
I get very frustrated with stunt people going, well, we can't do that because they may slip. And it's like, they're only ever happy if a person is actually standing on the ground.
Anytime you're not just on a stage or in a dojo per se, there are some things that you have to adjust to.
Yeah, I'm probably a little bit more guerrilla about it than Jeff, and so we were a great team. Saoirse, actually 2 shots on Christian. Good. Everyone was kind of fighting in different ways, and I found that really interesting because it meant that you weren't investigating character and then suddenly stopping character and going into an action sequence and then coming out of the action sequence and getting on with character and story again, but actually the fight sequence embellished the character as well as propelling the story forward. If you try to have Saoirse punch like, you know, a boxer, the whole thing falls, you know. So the fact that he kind of understood her character and made sure that she fought in a way that was relevant to her character meant the film succeeded in its first hurdle.
I mean, it was impressive that we were able to do this. We're not trained in it or anything, so it was fun, and I'm sure they'll be able to cut it together pretty well. I hope.
Saoirse, I knew that she was that good. I didn't know she was that good. Saoirse was constantly, every day on set, just blowing my mind. At the very centre of this film, with all this baroque artifice around it of kind of fight sequences and extraordinary locations and great music score and all of this, at the very centre of it is this little kid, and she carries it. And that I find extraordinary. That I find really beautiful.